My half-sister went crying to father and brother, complaining that I had stolen her hairpin. The next day, the jade pendant I always carried appeared in the hands of that foolish vagrant in the city. My childhood sweetheart brought the vagrant along, grinning as he asked me, "You once said your mother's dying wish was that you would marry whoever took your jade pendant. Now you can't go back on your word." My father and brothers urged me to apologize to my half-sister and back down. He only stepped in because we told him Ying had been wronged, to help vent her anger. "Just apologize and yield a little, we'll give you a way out. We won't really make you marry a vagabond." But I only smiled. Mother was once a princess, her words were as good as gold. How could I not honor her dying wish? After all, the carefree, prosperous days I yearn for all hinge on this jade pendant. My elder brother, Shinshochi, grew red-eyed with anxiety and dragged me to the side. "Jinshu, have you lost your mind? How can a legitimate daughter of a marquis's household marry a vagrant? Hurry up and apologize to Ying. As long as you don't act stubborn. His Highness Prince Jin and you are childhood sweethearts. He certainly won't make things hard for you." Childhood sweethearts. I turned my head, a mocking smile on my lips. As far as my eyes can see, my childhood sweetheart, Prince Jin Pei-ce, is brushing fallen petals from Shenying's shoulder. His movements are gentle, and a lovely flush blooms on his usually unruly face. Shenying, meanwhile, smiles sweetly and takes his hand. Even fallen petals have feelings. If this humble daughter gathers them, may I make your highness a sachet? I watched this scene of lover-like affection and let out a sarcastic laugh. "Brother, His Highness the Prince of Jin is fond of someone else, not me. Even if I wag my tail and beg for mercy, he still won't forgive me. I might as well just get married, at least it would fulfill one of mother's last wishes." Having finished speaking, I turned to walk away, but my older brother held my wrist tightly. "Jin Shu, you can see that His Highness Prince Jin is fond of Ying. What he does is only to vent his anger on Ying. Then you just need Ying's forgiveness. Isn't that enough? Hurry along. Ying is gentle and kind, she won't hold it against you. Today is your hairpin ceremony. After all, with many people and prying eyes, settle this quickly, so others won't use it to tarnish your name." I stared at my brother and suddenly let out a faint, wistful laugh. My laugh made his skin crawl, and he unconsciously let go of my hand. I said slowly, "Brother, so you do know that today is my capping ceremony. When Pei-ce brought people into the residence, why didn't you think to stop him?" Shinshochi was stammering under my questioning. He couldn't come up with an answer and could only desperately signal to Pei-ce with his eyes. Pei-ce walked over, still toying with that jade pendant in his hand. "Miss Shin, have you made up your mind? By the way, I once came to ask for this jade pendant, and you still wouldn't give it to me. How is it that today, when it fell into the hands of a foolish beggar, you're willing to? Could it be, Miss Shin, that you have rather peculiar tastes?" Pei-ce's voice was not low. The guests in the hall who had come to observe the ceremony heard it clearly. Shenying covered her mouth and shook with laughter as if she couldn't help herself. It felt like all the blood in my body was rushing to my head. This jade pendant is clearly the one I personally gave him years ago, yet he twisted right and wrong so shamelessly. I steadied my breathing, forcing myself to calm down, and turned a blossoming smile toward Pei-ce. "Your Highness, Prince Jin, your words are most apt. I would indeed rather marry a vagrant than marry you." Too, Pei-ce's expression changed at once, sensing something was wrong. Shenying's once smiling face turned sorrowful in an instant. "Sister, you mustn't, elder sister, as the legitimate daughter, how can you marry a foolish, witless vagabond, even if he's holding your personal jade pendant? You mustn't debase yourself like this," she cried and shouted, as if confirming my supposed impropriety. Today was meant to be my coming-of-age ceremony, and now such a scandal has erupted in an instant. Everyone's eyes converged on me. How could the legitimate daughter of a marquis's household marry a vagrant? Could it be that the two of them already had something going on? I think so. The man was brought by heir apparent Pei. Didn't you see Miss Shin's personal jade pendant end up in that vagrant's hands? It must be a token of their betrothal, the dignified daughter of a marquis's family. Yet she fancies a vagrant. Could it be that A few people whispered among themselves, the visible and invisible malice pressed down on me mercilessly. Shen Ying was still crying. Pei Si stood beside her, supporting her. He looked at me coldly. Shen Jinshu, apologize. You snatched Yingying's hairpin yesterday, and today you debased yourself and implicated her. Apologize to her, and return yesterday's hairpin, for the sake of Yingying. As long as Yingying is willing to forgive you, this king will consider the matter closed and will take the man away. Shen Ying nearly nestled in his arms, turning a triumphant smile toward me. The several women standing at the front had their eyes darting around again. I paid no attention to Pei Si and simply walked over, half smiling, half not. The madam who said, "These ladies look unfamiliar. I don't know which household they belong to." Seeing that they couldn't answer, I gave a cold laugh. So my marquisate is surprisingly benevolent, letting people eat and drink for free and even indulging them to speak rashly. If they don't know their identities, then throw them out of the capital. It shouldn't matter. Shen Ying's face immediately turned ugly. No, who was I to tolerate her butting in? The few nannies mother had left me with had already dragged her out. The hall suddenly became much quieter. Shen Shochi anxiously came over and tugged my sleeve. Jinshu, if you don't apologize to Yingying and instead keep busying yourself with this, what are you doing? With Prince Jin here, if you don't want to marry that vagabond, you'll have to bow your head sooner or later. Don't pretend to be stubborn anymore. I turned back in surprise. Brother, I've told you many times, I am willing to marry. Don't you all have ears? You only know to chase after me and demand an apology. Shen Shochi was left speechless. I walked toward the tramp. Though his clothes were ragged, his eyes shone astonishingly when they looked at me, in front of half the city's noble ladies and gentlemen. I smiled brightly and reached out my hand to him. Come on, my fiancé. 3. Stop. Before his hand closed, Pei Si's angry shout followed. His face was ashen, but I smiled brightly. Prince Jin, are your ears not working either? Then I'll say it again, I am willing to marry this man. Pei Si's expression grew several degrees colder. He was naturally aloof. Even when angry he wouldn't flare up, he would only look at you coldly, and that alone sent a chill through people. He said coolly, "Your choosing to abase yourself has nothing to do with me, Your Highness, but you snatched Yingying's hairpin yesterday. Shouldn't it be returned to its rightful owner now?" His gaze fell on the colorful phoenix and sun hairpin in my hair. This was the pin I used for my coming-of-age ceremony today. Behind Pei Si, Shen Ying timidly pointed out, "Sister, whether you despise me or bully me, the things my stepmother left me, I truly cannot hand them over." She cried beautifully. It broke my heart. Beside me, however, I heard the vagabond give a faint snort. I frowned and first had the maid take him downstairs to wash and dress. Pei Si's gaze was cold and fierce. "Shen Jinshu, it's already wrong to take what belongs to others, let alone a keepsake from your deceased mother. Is that how you've been raised? Your mother, if she knows in the afterlife and sees you like this, would surely be ashamed." I forced down my anger. Pei Si was the Jin Wang, the emperor's own son. My mother was merely a grand princess granted her title by favor. If I picked a fight with him, I would only lose doubly. Besides, the hairpin Shen Ying was so intent on seizing might not be such a good thing after all. I lifted my hand and pulled out the hairpin. "Since you like it, wear it often from now on." After my meaningful admonition, I walked away. From behind came Shen Shochi's feigned concern. "Jinshu, where are you going?" I didn't look back. My voice drifted faintly in the late spring breeze. "To see my future husband," for I had that wanderer settled in a secluded wing of the residence. Later, a maid quietly reported, "Miss, we've sent a few footmen to wash the man, but his face is covered in scars, truly terrifying." I nodded. Got it. My feet carried me straight into the house without pause, only to halt abruptly, completely unprepared. In the corridor, a youth in white stood facing the wind. The belt at his waist outlined a tall, upright figure like a pine. Like jade, only his face was hidden behind a silver mask. "Elder sister." My pupils suddenly contracted, and I stepped closer, my voice gentle. "A mask of this material and workmanship doesn't seem like something a beggar would have." He turned to look at me, his handsome eyes narrowing slightly. "I was just afraid of frightening you, sister." I smiled. Half the capital already knows you're my fiancé. Do I not have the right to see your true face? He didn't hesitate at all, only shook his head. You already knew I wasn't an ordinary person, didn't you? Otherwise, why would he deliberately lead Pace to give the jade pendant into my hands? I didn't answer. As he said, I felt something was wrong when Pace was scourging the streets looking for the idiot beggar. To prevent him from succeeding, I had someone deliberately lead him to the man standing before us. It seems I guessed right. I am the future husband personally chosen by my sister. He smiled meaningfully. Sister may simply call me Yang Ci. Banquet speech. Pei Yenji. I really wasn't wrong. The person before me is none other than the late Empress's youngest son, the Prince of An, Pei Yenji, who was sent off to Qingju at 7. With him here, Pei Ci's claim to the crown prince position is likely in jeopardy. 5. The farce at the ceremony of the hairpin ritual quickly spread throughout the capital. My father ordered someone to call me into the main hall. Kneel down. He flared at the nostrils, his hand trembling as he pointed at me. The Shun family's face has been completely ruined by you. I stood still. Shinshochi frowned and pulled me by the arm. Jinshu, don't be so stubborn. Right now there's gossip outside that you've been involved with a beggar. That beggar is terribly ugly, yet you insist on marrying him. The imperial concubine is considering the match between Yingying and Prince Jin. If you mess this up, can you take responsibility? Kneel down and beg forgiveness from father and Yingying now. We've already arranged a marriage for you. Tomorrow you'll marry the cousin from your younger uncle's household. Those rapid-fire words came wrapped in a pretended concern for my well-being. I shook off Shinshochi's hand and asked coldly, my uncle died on the battlefield long ago. Where would this younger uncle come from? Could it be Shin Ying's uncle? His stupid son counts as a cousin. Brother, you really managed to debase yourself in a uniquely disgraceful way. I gave a half-smile, and Shinshochi flushed red. Father roared angrily, how dare you? Your cousin is honest and good-natured. Besides, you would even marry a tramp. Does that mean your cousin is worse than a tramp? Thinking of Pei Yensi's appearance, I shook my head. Indeed. Not as good. My father was so angry at me that he was speechless. Shinying hurriedly stepped forward, trying to dissuade her. Sister, things are already urgent and time is running out. For the sake of my and Prince Jin's marriage, please endure this for a bit. Besides, this matter isn't just father's decision. His Highness has already entered the palace and petitioned Consort Gui for an imperial edict to grant the marriage. Only if you marry will I be able to hold my own wedding. At the end, uncontrollable joy showed in Shinying's eyes. Once the noble consort's golden decree is issued, elder sister has no choice but to marry. As if in response to Shinying's words, a clamor suddenly rose outside. I slowly turned my head and looked at Pei Ce, who was striding in. 6. Pei Ce finally stopped in front of me. His brows and eyes are strikingly handsome, yet when he looks at me, there isn't the slightest ripple, as if, for the past decade or more, he hasn't known me at all. But that's not true. We wrote and painted together, counted the stars, and watched more than a dozen springs pass in the capital. Since I was little, I was never favored in the Shin household. In my father's eyes, there was only my elder brother and the concubine he loved. His only assessment of me was, she has a perverse temper and is truly unlikable. My mother did love me, but she was long bedridden with illness. The moment Pei Ce saw me, he knew I was not favored. He is His Majesty's favorite son. Yet he cares for me and tends to me with unflagging attention, with such obvious favoritism plainly shown. I suppose no one could refuse it. Since your father spoils your eldest brother, I'll spoil you. That way everyone has someone who cares for them. Up until the year my mother died, my concubine aunt joyfully brought her daughter back home. Only now did I learn that father had an illegitimate daughter. She is Shinying. Shinying is different from me, gentle and beautiful, skilled in singing and dancing. She performed a dance for father's birthday. And Pei Ce, who had sneaked over to see me that day, was utterly entranced. Jinshu, I used to think you were the one treated unfairly, but now I see your younger half-sister suffers even more. At least you were born in the Marquis's residence, dressed in brocade and fed fine food. She has to be sent to a remote countryside to grow up because of your mother's jealousy. Jinshu, you should yield to her more. I felt a flash of anger flare up that day. Pei went back with his nosebleed. Covered for several months after that, I didn't speak to him not until today, when he came to give me trouble for Shenying. Shenjinshu, Pei said, my mother consort has already granted you a marriage. Once the decree is announced, you won't have to marry that vagabond. I heard you've been sheltering people in the Shun residence. I'll take them all away today and deal with them together. He smiled, his gaze gently settling on Shenying. After all, you're a maiden awaiting marriage. Such behavior truly violates feminine virtue and will tarnish Yingying's reputation. I quietly looked at Pei without saying a word. First he plotted to have a vagrant smear my name, then, with righteous grandeur, bestowed a marriage upon me as if from beginning to end, he had always been the good guy, yet all he did was shove me from one pit of fire into another. Seeing me keep silent, Pei grew somewhat displeased. Shenjinshu, where is she? If you intend to shelter her, I'll have to bring men to search. He was just about to give the order when a man's voice, tinged with laughter, drifted over from the courtyard gate. Who dares to search this prince? 7. Seeing the figure approaching from afar, Pei stared wide-eyed as if he'd seen a ghost. Pei, you, how are you here? I lowered my head to hide the emotion in my eyes. After the coming-of-age ceremony, I overheard Pei and Shenying whispering, father is gravely ill, mother is in charge of the harem, and I've already had someone eliminate that useless younger brother on the road. Yingying, before long I will be able to openly take you as my main wife. Their affection was as deep as the sea, moving enough to stir one's heart, and Shenying was indeed so moved that she could not help but be overwhelmed. Your Highness's affection is profound. I truly have no way to repay you. It's just that my elder sister and your Highness have been childhood sweethearts. If her marriage is still undecided, how can I properly marry, your Highness? Why not ask the noble consort to grant another decree and bestow a match for my sister? Pei agreed without hesitation. I quietly withdrew and had someone send a message to Pei Yensi. He had 3 days to obtain the imperial decree of betrothal, but the only reply Pei Yensi sent back was 2 words, tomorrow. He did it, just as expected. 8. Pei Yensi took off his mask, and his handsome features drew the crowd's attention. Even Shenying was no exception. Elder brother, what do you mean by that? I arrived in the capital first, then hurried to the Shun residence. Naturally there's an important matter to discuss. Speaking of which, I must thank you, elder brother. What important matter? Pei-Si's voice tightened, the doubts in his eyes growing heavier. Catching sight of the golden yellow scroll clenched in Pei-Si's hand, Pei Yensi gave an enlightened smile. If it is the consort's decree, big brother might as well wait a moment, out of respect for rank. We must first follow the emperor's order. Saying this, he waved the bright yellow scroll in his hand. Pei clenched his teeth and agreed. He could more or less guess what kind of edict Pei Yensi held. I knelt quietly. The late spring wind was warm and clear, brushing through my hair. Pei-Si's complexion gradually turned ashen, while Shenying and Shinshochi looked terrified. This is impossible, Shenying screamed first. Shenjinshu clearly agreed to marry a vagabond. How could she become the princess consort of Princeton? Your Highness Princeton, were you deceived by her? The chief eunuch behind Pei Yensi reacted the fastest and scolded sharply. How dare you? You have no right to speak in the presence of their highnesses. Pei, however, defended Shenying. Yingying makes a fair point, brother. You've been at the frontier for many years and might not know. Miss Shun did indeed agree to marry someone else a few days ago. Even if the marriage was granted by father, that engagement probably doesn't count, right? 9. Pei Yensi smiled. Oh, if father's betrothal doesn't count, then consort Gui's does. His blunt words made Pei look a little lost face. But that person had Shenjinshu's jade pendant. Her birth mother had a dying wish. Whoever holds the pendant she must marry. That pendant was clearly in a beggar's hands yesterday, perhaps bolstered by Pei. Shenying cried out in agitation. Pei Yensi opened his palm, and a small, warm jade pendant lay in the center. But this pendant, Pei-Si's eyes suddenly widened. Pei Yensi seemed pleased by his astonishment and laughed as he closed his hand. A few days ago on my way to the capital I ran into some trouble. To save myself I had to give up my belongings and disguise myself as a beggar. I never expected, by chance, to obtain Miss Shen's pendant. I also didn't expect that this pendant was the token left by the princess. What I least expected was that my eldest brother would run around on my behalf and arrange it all for me. Speaking of which, I must thank my eldest brother for introducing us and helping me fulfill this. Fiancé looked sincerely grateful. The wedding is set for the winter month. Brother must come and drink 2 more cups then. Fiancé's expression grew increasingly sullen. But in front of the whole Shen household, and before the string of attendants and palace servants behind Fiancé, he ground his teeth and said, "Of course that will be fine." 10 Fiancé hurried away. I didn't hear from him for several days. Fiancé took the clear path and unceremoniously moved things into my courtyard. He grandly named them betrothal gifts. These were mother's dowry in life. Leaving them in the palace would just gather dust. It's best to give them to my sister to enjoy. Besides, even if I didn't move them, someone would be watching them like a hawk. He was naturally referring to Fiancé's birth mother, noble consort Xue. At that point I couldn't refuse. So I silently consented. Thus, 3 to 5 times a day betrothal gifts were sent to my place, like setting out a continuous banquet. Nurse Zhao was delighted and single-mindedly counted my private effects. When she was nearly done, she suddenly looked up. "Miss, the next courtyard has been much quieter these past few days." She meant Shenying. Shenying's courtyard was eerily quiet. Only the occasional sound of ceramics shattering broke the silence. Shen Xiuqi, however, ran over to Shen Ying's courtyard frequently, if the madam were still alive. Seeing the young master behave like this, she'd surely faint from anger. She fumed. I, however, was very calm. I observed mourning in my youth and didn't return home for 3 years. Whoever he is close to among the sisters, it's only natural. That was true when I was 10. Mother grew sicker after hearing the terrible news from the frontier. Father lingered in the concubines' rooms and spoke harshly to mother even when he saw her, blaming her for occupying the position of the principal wife. "It's because you are so jealous that Yingying still remains in the countryside and cannot return to the house." Kui warning, how could I be blind in marrying such an unvirtuous woman like you? Even the daughter you bore is as perverse as you, not half as pleasing as Yingying. Each word stabbed into mother's heart. Even hearing it made my chest ache. Mother, so proud and strong, didn't shed a single tear or utter a complaint. She only used the last bit of strength in her life to petition for a princess's title. The favor doesn't last 3 generations. Jinshu, mother couldn't obtain a title for you. A princess's daughter's status is the last thing mother could secure for you. Those were her final words. They were for me alone. She never mentioned a single word about my half-brother. Brother. Why is that? 11 Shen Xiuqi soon came to find me. If you have something to say, say it. I don't want to beat around the bush with you anymore. Shen Xiuqi's face darkened. Jinshu, are you still blaming me, your brother? But both Yingying and you are my sisters, both flesh of my hand, and I had no choice. You don't know how pitiful Yingying looked the year she first returned to the household. She was so thin and small. Pitiful. I nearly laughed out loud. Does he know that when I was mourning my mother, I hid in the small Buddhist shrine? The candle wax burned all night, and my tears never stopped. But I don't want to waste any more feelings on him. I told you. If you have something to say, say it. Keep barking at me here and I'll throw you out. Shen Xiuqi swallowed his rage. Jinshu, Yingying wants to enter the palace. Isn't that inappropriate? I smiled. I'm about to marry His Highness the Prince of An. If she enters the palace to serve His Majesty, wouldn't the generations get all mixed up? His face went pale and green. Yingying wants to see the noble consort. Ever since His Majesty arranged the betrothal between you and the Prince of An, the noble consort has been silent. Yingying is as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. There's no news from the mansion. Only you, as the future Princess of An, can bring Yingying into the palace. I smiled. Brother, now you're the one asking me for a favor. Asking me. If you're asking, you should act like someone who is asking, like you said back then. Kneel and beg me, maybe I'll soften. Shen Xiuqi clenched his jaw. Jinshu, don't think that just because you've become princess consort of Prince and you can sit back and relax. You'll still have plenty of times you need your maiden family in the future. Oh, I propped my chin and looked at him. But right now, you're the one asking me. He held it in again and again, and finally lowered his head. Please show mercy, little sister. I looked with satisfaction at Shinshochi, who was bent over and bowing. No problem. 12 I keep my word. The next day imperial concubine Shui summoned Shenying to the palace. She was smug, her makeup exquisite and ornate, and she had deliberately put on the colorful phoenix and sun hairpin, the very one she had snatched away from me at my coming-of-age ceremony. Thank you, sister. Shenying gave me a false smile, her fingers casually brushing the phoenix hairpin. This hairpin really suits me better after all. I should thank you for your generosity, sister. I smiled. As long as you like it, I hope you'll still like it later. Watching Shenying smoothly board the carriage to the palace, Shinshochi's expression eased slightly. Princeton has ultimately lost his mother. He is not as deeply favored as consort Shui. In the future, when you interact with Yingying, you must be mindful of your limits. I smiled, a curl at my lips. Do you mean flatter and ingratiate myself like brother does? But I heard that brother's attempt to join the Jinwu Guard has been delayed and still hasn't been handled. You, Shinshochi's face flushed red. That's because His Majesty's dragon body is unwell. The noble consort and His Highness Prince Jin dare not rashly petition. Just self-deception. I lifted my eyes to look. The vast sky was narrowed to a small patch by the courtyard walls, just like my father's and Shinshochi's gazes always confined to the inner residence. Little did they know that the hopes they had pinned on Shen Yingfei's meteoric rise were about to be shattered. It was not yet noon when the household servants who had been sent to escort Shenying into the palace came back in a panic. Young master, you must go at once. Second miss has been punished by the Empress Dowager. What? Shinshochi jolted to his feet, even knocking over a scalding teacup. He glared at me. Shinjinshu, did you do this? 13 Shinshochi and my father insisted I enter the palace. I happened to want to see what suffering Shenying had endured. Before I even stepped into the main hall, I heard the Empress Dowager angrily scolding. Tell me, where did this hairpin come from? The Empress Dowager rarely lost her temper, and her fury startled even consort Shui. Shenying, even more bewildered, kept crying, Your Majesty the Empress Dowager. Your servant girl doesn't know. I glanced at the phoenix hairpin tossed to the ground by Shenying and at her disheveled hair, and I understood the situation. I personally picked up the phoenix hairpin and solemnly knelt. Empress Dowager, allow this servant to report. This phoenix hairpin was a keepsake my mother left me before she passed, but just 2 days ago, my junior cousin Shenying saw the hairpin and, taken by it, wished to claim it as her own. I originally refused, but my father and brothers all favored her, and even His Highness Prince Jin spoke on her behalf. I was helpless and had to relinquish it, after just a few words. The Empress Dowager sneered. Good. I'm not even dead yet, and someone dares to openly steal something I bestowed. If I die someday, won't you even dare to tear down this Shokung Palace? Shenying looked at me in disbelief, her eyes round with shock. Coming to her senses, she hurriedly pounded the ground with her forehead. May the Empress Dowager judge with clarity. This servant did not know it was an imperial gift. I would never dare offend. I begged the Empress Dowager to judge. She kowtowed until her forehead was bruised and purple, faint traces of blood seeping out, framing that small face with disheveled hair, pitiable and adorable. But there was no one here to pity her. This woman's nature is depraved. Soft and treacherous by disposition, the Empress Dowager closed her eyes and announced Shenying's sentence in a cold voice. With such conduct, she is truly unbearable. 14 When Shenying was returned to the mansion, she was carried back. The Empress Dowager's 2 sentences were enough to shatter her dream of being a princess. Consort Shui went further and issued an order to punish and reprimand her father and brothers for poor upbringing. After Shenying woke up, she went mad trying to find me. Shinjinshu, it's all you. That hairpin was clearly given to me by you, she screamed hoarsely, as if I had deliberately framed her and ruined her life. I looked toward my father and brothers kneeling outside the courtyard to receive punishment, curled my lips in a smile. Shenying, aren't you curious? Why did consort Shui issue an edict to punish father and my brothers, but spare me? She glared at me hatefully, her eyes full of venom. Isn't it because you seduced Prince An ahead of time, you slut? It's all because of you that I and Prince Jin couldn't be together. I smiled. But the Crown Prince Jin, whom you miss so much, doesn't seem to have any intention of coming to visit you. Shen Ying's expression changed. Shen Jinshu, I know what you want to say. Don't even think about sowing discord between me and His Highness. I know it's precisely because the Crown Prince Jin abandoned you that you are so cunningly plotting to trap me. He promised me he would marry me, and even the flower perfume sachet I made by hand, he wears it every day. Is that so? The corners of my lips curled into a mocking arc as I took out a black sachet. Forgot to tell you, just now, His Highness had someone return this sachet to you. He said that from now on, there will be nothing more between you. 15. Shun Ying looked deranged, grabbing whatever was at hand and hurling it at me, but Pei Yanci had already whisked me away from there. After this incident, your father and brother dote on Shun Ying so much, would they abandon their allegiance to Prince Jin for her sake? I gently shook my head. No, their love for Shun Ying is far from the point where they would sacrifice their interests. If Shun Ying couldn't latch onto Pei Ce, they probably wouldn't indulge and spoil her like this, is what they value most. Without the Shun Ying connection, they would simply look for another way and do everything they could to deepen their ties with Pei Ce. I'm going to make sure they're firmly tied to this wreck that's about to capsize. I asked Pei Yanci, how is His Majesty's relationship with noble consort Shui these days? A faint flicker passed through Pei Yanci's eyes. I'm already back. Do you think their relationship could still be good? That's true. Concubine Shui is absolutely implicated in the death of Pei Yanci's birth mother. Pei Yanci leaving the capital at the age of 7 was naturally the result of the imperial consort scheme. For many years, she alone has monopolized the favor of the inner palace, and her family's power has dominated all others. It's just that since this spring, His Majesty began favoring a new consort, and shortly afterward took to his sickbed. After the imperial physicians made several visits in and out of the inner palace, His Majesty secretly summoned Pei Yanci back. That long-spread tale of the emperor and his consort's deep love is probably about to shatter. He has already grown suspicious of the Shui clan. I'm not surprised learning that the person beside your pillow is very likely a wolf in sheep's clothing. No one could possibly sit at ease. So, he plans to make me the crown prince. My eyes suddenly lit up. That couldn't be better. Pei Yanci gently covered my hand. I know there's hatred in your heart, but no matter what, you must protect yourself. If we fail, go to Qingju. I've left you one last way out there. Learning this unexpectedly, I smiled like a blooming flower, covering Pei Yanci's hand with my own. I smiled and met his slightly surprised gaze. Your Highness, we had an agreement. You and I share life and death. Have you forgotten? We've always been the most in-sync partners. Pei Yanci froze for a moment, then delight spread through his eyes in a joyful smile. I thought you'd already forgotten. Sis, 16, how could I possibly forget? When my mother died, because of her status as a princess, I had to enter the palace to give thanks. Regarding my mother's death, concubine Shui only gave a half smile and said, as the principal wife, one must be magnanimous. Your mother was like that too. She brought her fate upon herself. But the next moment, she unexpectedly slipped by the imperial lake and lost the second child she had not yet carried to term. There were many people around at the time, but I saw Pei Yanci. In a flash, I remembered what my mother said before she passed. The imperial consort is overly favored and implicated in the late empress's death. If possible, I do not wish for you to marry His Highness the Prince of Jin. As if guided by some unseen force, I drew back the step I was about to take. I gave Pei Yanci an innocent, harmless smile. Everything unfolded just as expected. In the height of July's midsummer, His Majesty issued an edict naming Pei Yanci as crown prince. That same month, Prince Jin took Shun Ying as a concubine. Whether it was true affection or an exchange of interests, I do not know. All I know is that the day before Shun Ying was carried into the prince's manor in a small sedan chair, my father and brothers put forward all the public funds we had saved and fully boarded Pei Ce's ship. By rights, a concubine shouldn't require a formal wedding ceremony, Yet Pei Ce personally came to fetch me before the ceremony had even begun. He had already trapped me at the mansion gate. Jinshu, I never imagined we'd come to this. I've prepared a small sedan at the back gate. Go there now, and tomorrow you will be my legitimate wife. I've missed you far too much already. I don't want to miss you again. Pei Ce gazed at me with deep affection. I smiled. Don't talk nonsense. I'm going to marry a homeless man. Remember, this seems to have provoked Pei Ce, and he shook his head frantically. No, Jinshu, everything that happened before is my fault. Your father and brothers, along with Shenying, deceived me. Come with me, and I promise I will protect you in the future. I will protect you for a lifetime. Pei Yance's scheming is hard to gauge. You must never be with him. I pried his fingers open one by one. Pei Ce, from the very moment at my father's birthday banquet when you felt pity for Shenying, I decided to regard you as if you didn't exist. Perhaps the chill in my eyes was too icy. Pei Ce slowly let go of my hand. The joyous sounds of the wedding rose right then as he carried Shenying out the door. He passed by me and left a sentence. Jinshu, wait for me. I silently rolled my eyes. Wait for what? Are you waiting to be killed 17 after Prince Jin's joyous event of taking a concubine? It was time for my and Pei Yance's wedding. Pei Yance told me that the Shui clan had been getting increasingly restless. Judging by the look of it, there's an 8 or 9 chance they'll make a move on the day of our wedding. I didn't care, but Pei Yance looked guilty. If that's true, I'll make it up to you later with a proper wedding. Okay, sister. He deliberately sat a little closer to me, his tone rising slightly at the end, warm breath brushing my ear. It had been a long time since he'd called me sister. In that call were 3 parts coaxing, 3 parts flirtation, and the remaining 4 parts deliberate seduction. I nodded and answered, okay. Pei Yance's guess was right. On the day of the wedding, he went to offer a toast and did not return for a long time. I waited and waited. The incense in the burner had long since burned out. Figures outside the door were in disarray. They must have been locked out. I took a deep breath and tightened my grip on the dagger. Footsteps drew nearer and nearer, and the door was rammed open with a bang. Shinshochi burst in. When he saw me, a reproving smile crossed his face. As expected of my good younger sister, you anticipated we'd come. It's a pity you're just a weak woman. However clever, you cannot escape death. He closed in step by step, his smile cold and venomous like a snake. Good sister, brother will send you to reunite with Pei Yance right away. Mother, I cried out miserably at the moment he was about to come closer. Shinshochi broke into a cold sweat, panicked, and turned back, stumbling into my mournful weeping. Brother, it's really you. What nonsense are you talking? I don't know anything. Shinshochi shook his head desperately. I pulled out a yellowed prescription. The paper fluttered in the night wind as if it might be blown away at any moment. This prescription, can you say you don't recognize it? Those bowls of medicine, who fed them to mother with their own hands? Shinshochi's eyes widened abruptly. How did you know? He had not expected this old matter to be uncovered when he personally fed mother the poison. I was only 9. I was the only one at her side when she died. She died of a broken heart. Not for love, but for her own son. No, it wasn't me. The night wind blew in, and the last wisp of incense went out. Shinshochi looked as if he had gone mad. No, it wasn't me. My voice pursued him without relent. Brother, people say children take after their mothers. You see your face every day, doesn't that remind you of her? Why would you refuse to see mother as she lay dying? Why do you obey Shen Yingyang in everything? Why insist on bringing the Shen family to rely on Pei Ce? Brother, tell me, what are you guilty of? No, the incense burned out. Shinshochi let out a despairing roar. I spat the cool antidote from my mouth and looked toward the roof at the hidden guards. Take him away. It turned out the incense in the burner was designed to make one delirious and limp. Dozens of hidden guards had been lying in wait on the roof. Pei Yanci and I had long been prepared. After Shinshochi was dealt with, my unease deepened. I did not know how things were going over at Pei Yanci's side. There was no more movement in the bridal chamber. They likely thought it wasn't worth wasting time on a woman like me. Not until dawn did a commotion come from ahead, and the one who burst in was Pei Ce. I was taken aback. He quickly pressed the dagger across my Throat. Fiancé. Shinjinshu is in my hands. The silhouetted figure at the forefront suddenly stopped. Pei's thumb rested on the hilt. His tone was tender, like a lover murmuring, "Jinshu, come with me." "Okay, you promised me you'd wait." "No, I hadn't promised." I tilted my head. "But you hurt me. The hairpin is heavy. I'm uncomfortable." Pei looked at me warily, confirmed I was weak, and allowed me to remove the colorful phoenix hairpin from my coiffure. This hairpin, he seemed to recognize it. His voice held nostalgia. "I was wrong before. Let's start over, shall we?" I nodded. "All right." The phoenix hairpin in my hand, however, plunged without hesitation into his neck. "Then hurry and be reborn. I'll wait for your new life." Blood gushed. Pei's eyes widened as he slowly fell. The dagger stained with blood too. I touched my neck. Damn, he had wounded me. The scene before me blurred. Only a backlit figure ran toward me. I strained to read his lips. He was calling. "Sister." When I woke, Fiancé had been by my side for 3 days and 3 nights. Pei did not die. For treason he was imprisoned in the heavenly prison by Fiancé and confined for life. The cell was cramped and cold, freezing in winter and hot in summer, impregnable. Shun Yingyang had been violated during that palace upheaval and died a miserable death. My father and Shinshochi, feigning madness and foolishness, they were also confined by Fiancé. "I await your judgment," I pondered. For a moment, then said in a low voice, "Years ago my father, to elevate concubine Fu, tricked Shinshochi into poisoning my mother. I still have the recipe for that poison. I fed it to them every day, a bowl each." Pei Yang nodded. "Good, the Shui family has already been executed by me. Our vendetta has been avenged. Sister, I want you to stay with me properly." Nodding in acknowledgement, I replied, "Very well. Then you must promise me that in this life you will have only my wife, my mother, and the mother of Fiancé. Both died because of the intrigue and fights for favor in the inner house. I do not wish to repeat the same fate." Fiancé agreed without hesitation. "All right." 21 We held an even grander wedding. On the day of the ceremony, Pei attempted suicide and was rescued by the guards. He looked at me in my phoenix robe, his eyes clouded. "No, Jinshu, how could this be? Jinshu, come with me. We have known each other for more than 10 years. How could you bear to leave me?" Jinshu, I miss you so much." The jailer informed me that Pei was already a bit out of his senses. If he is confined in this tiny place every day, he will die or go mad. I nodded in understanding. The room he lives in is merely a narrow space. Not even sunlight can enter. Pei's eyes are probably ruined in this way. As for whether what he longs for is me, or the carefree days of youth, I no longer care. Shinshochi sent letters frequently, claiming the so-called deep sibling bond. All of which I threw into the fire pit and burned. I turned my head to instruct the imperial physicians to increase his dosage, to keep him lucid, yet he must endure endless pain day after day 100-fold, because my earlier injuries left me with severe qi and blood deficiency. The imperial physicians declared I would hardly be able to bear children. I did not take this to heart. I focused on advancing female education and recruiting female officials. I did not want women to be confined to one side of the world, wasting their youth and even their lives in vain. 7 years after Fiancé ascended the throne, we selected an heir from among the royal clan, and there was no longer any opposition in court. With years of my efforts, women's status rose, coupled with Fiancé's unwavering devotion all these years. The practice of taking concubines greatly diminished. After I finished the last memorial, the sky had already plunged into complete darkness. Dozens of palace lanterns guided me. Fiancé, holding the child, walking toward me with a smile. Mother Empress, Mother Empress." Behind me, a blood-red moonlight poured down. "The sun that rises tomorrow will be a brand new and bright sun."